There we go. All right. So today we are discussing AI ethics. So at Proposal Industry Experts, we are really, really pro technology. But one of our core tenets is the idea of equality and equity and advocating for the voices that aren't heard. And so because of that, we know that there are always concerns when a major technology is introduced. And we've done a lot of like pro ChatGPT and use case design, but now we will really want to kind of talk about some of the things that you need to be aware of when you're using this technology that maybe you're not. And so to do that, Uniqueka Walcott, one of our Baker's Dozen and founding customer advisory members, has brought together this fantastic panel of individuals, experts in the industry. So with that in mind, Uniqueka, I'll hand it over to you and drop off.
Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have this conversation. It really started as kind of an idea, and you guys said yes really fast. It was kind of scary. But I'm glad because things are moving at the speed of light. And so I have the absolute pleasure of presenting to you guys an amazing panel of people who I was able to call and say, hey, I've got an idea. Would you guys be willing to take this journey with me? And I'm so grateful you all said yes. Thank you. I'm going to open the floor to let them introduce themselves. I would first like to start with Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Bess. I am the Director of Administration here at Southeastern Surveying and Mapping Corporation. It's a surveying and mapping firm based in Florida. And I'm also the General Counsel. So today my perspective is going to be more on the legal side, and I'm excited to be a part of this with Uniqueka and the team.
Thank you so much. Moira?
Hi, everybody. My name is Moira Balange. I am the Executive Vice President of Third Coast Interactive, which is what I consider kind of a digital PR company based in the Nashville, Tennessee metro area. And when I say digital PR, I mean we focus on helping businesses with their online marketing by using automated tools and building kind of customized integrations and software to help them reach their marketing and public relations goals. So very excited on being part of this panel today and really excited to see what my other panelists have to say.
Thank you so much. Josh?
All right, so my name is Joshua Plick. I'm the founder CEO of Or Equals. We are a custom business software development shop. And we kind of live at the cutting edge of where companies are trying to take their in-house processes and they're trying to automate them and develop their own software platforms. So we have a unique position of kind of being on the cutting edge of where companies are trying to innovate. And I have been pushing my team very aggressively towards using artificial intelligence in every aspect of their workday. And I'm really excited for the future of artificial intelligence, but there are quite a few concerns that I'm hoping that we get to talk about those things today.
Thank you so much. Tom, last but not least, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Tom Ives founded Integrated Machine Learning and AI. It's a large community of data scientists learning to live more together. And I'm also senior data scientist for Echo Global Logistics. And I love being a super geek and automating anything I can.
Thank you all. And so with that, I'm going to move into our first set of questions. They're going to be our sort of stage questions, and then we're going to open the floor to the audience so that you guys can ask your questions and see what our panel thinks. And so I'm going to start this first question with Tom. Tom, and I'm going to move through the group to give each of you a chance to answer. What ethical considerations to AI are unique to AI versus other forms of technology?
Well, just in general, anything that becomes powerful can be dangerous. And my concern is not so much AI itself, but the hands of the people that it's in. Are they going to be using it to help humanity or hurt it? And this group of panelists had a pre-meeting, and forgive me, I can't remember which one of them said this brilliant thing, but I think it's high time when we see anything produced by AI, we start to ask for its sources. For example, just an example, if I were writing even an article and I was in a rush and I used ChatGPT to spin up an initial copy and then went through and edit it, I would name the authors Tom Ives and ChatGPT. I think it's just high time we're honest, not just about where this came from, but the data sources themselves. And that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you for that. Anything that is powerful can be dangerous, and it matters what the people do with it. I want to pose that same question to Moira. What ethical considerations are unique to artificial intelligence compared to other forms of technology?
I would say, I think the fact that AI is trying to be as human-like as possible, there's not a lot that we use in our day-to-day lives right now that tries to replicate that. So it tries to sound like a human in its writing. For instance, when it's creating images, graphics, things like that, it tries to mimic human artists. And so, number one, from the consumer perspective, who's consuming the content that something like ChatGPT or similar is putting out, how are we able to discern what's 100% human produced and not human produced? And on the flip side too is all of the stuff that's being produced by artificial intelligence is either inspired by or, takes data from stuff that was created by humans. And so to Tom's point, okay, so an article that was written by him and ChatGPT, but for ChatGPT to help with that article, it also had to take into account other sources written by humans. And so then you get into the very, very complex area of how do you then say, okay, this was written by this chatbot, which took its inspiration from these artists, these writers, these movies. And so it just really gets into that gray area of what is 100% from a human, 100% from an AI, and kind of like that gray area in between.
That includes a lot of excellent points, especially when we talk about the gray area. Where did this come from? Produced? Is it AI produced, and who owns it? I want to pose the same question to Rebecca. Rebecca, what ethical considerations are unique to artificial intelligence compared to other forms of technology?
I think it, as the two panelists greatly said, it goes back to ownership, like who is owning this information, and also we're placing all of our trust in our resources in this database, and who's controlling what is going inside of it. What is going inside of it? What are the users? I know that last year they had this rapper that was an AI rapper, and he signed a contract, and then they realized that his content was very defamatory and racial. So who is creating this? Who is behind this particular rapper? Who is the voice behind it? And who's going to get paid for the services for these particular things? So it's like, even though it's a computer generated software, there's still some human components, and therefore the human aspect still has to get compensation and consideration when it comes to the use of the technology and the tool.
I love that you brought up the question, it's paid for these services. Definitely a human is still required. That's a very critical point. Josh, I want to pose the same question to you. What ethical considerations are unique to AI compared to other forms of technology?
There are a couple, but the one I'd love to focus on is responsibility. A big problem when we talk about artificial intelligence is it's making decisions, and it has real life outcomes for human beings, but it's a machine making the decision, not a person. So let's just say you have two Teslas coming at each other at 70 miles per hour, right? We have a head-on collision, and let's say in a split second, both of these Teslas are determining that this collision is unavoidable. What if those Teslas have information about their drivers? Say one of them is a barista at Starbucks, and one of them is trying to hunt for the cure to cancer. Are those two vehicles going to determine that based on how they're going to swerve and do this impact, that the person hunting for cancer is going to live and the barista at Starbucks is going to die? Like, who determines that this life is worth more than the other? Artificial intelligence, the fact that it's effectively a runaway train at this point, as we've seen ChatGPT come into and AI come into the cultural zeitgeist over the course of these past 60 to 90 days, the innovation that's happening is outpacing regulation. And so ultimately, because the machine is making decisions, who is responsible for the decisions of these machines? If people die, I mean, at the end of the day, we have autonomous drones. People are going to be killed by people are going to be killed and have been killed by autonomous machines. Who is responsible? Like, when a machine is making the decision, who do we blame? Who do we take to court? That is a major concern of artificial intelligence. Another one is, of course, is biased data. Like you have Google's Bard. Google's Bard, when asked questions about Joe Biden, has a lot to say, but when it asks an opinion about Donald Trump, it's a left-leaning machine, and so it has a left-leaning bias, and so that's also a major concern, that the data that these artificial intelligence models are built upon have human biases, and so they're going to naturally lean towards a bias. And so I'll just leave it at those two. Like, we have some serious ethical concerns on the backs of artificial intelligence and the advent of it in the cultural zeitgeist.
Wow. You've given us a lot to really mull over when we talk about who is to blame and who is to say that AI is not making decisions about who lives and dies. That is one. And so kind of with that sort of in mind, I want to lean into our next question. What are some potential risks and benefits of AI, and how can we ensure that the benefits outweigh the risk? What are some steps we can take? And I'll start with Moira on this.
Well, I don't know that even with the current technology that we use, and it's pretty ubiquitous now, that we are 100% sure that the benefits outweigh the risks. So, like our smartphones, for instance, that's been around. For most people, they can't imagine life without a smartphone. I know I'm one of those people, so I'll readily admit to that. And they are still studying the risks of having that kind of device available to us 24/7. And we can easily see the benefits of it in our day-to-day lives. But the question of whether or not those benefits outweigh the risks, I think that remains to be said. And I think that's also inherent to the nature of technologies like this, because maybe my smartphone in its current state today has benefits that outweigh the risk. But if they push an update to it tomorrow, that's going to alter the balance a little bit potentially. And so it's interesting because we don't have the luxury of stepping back and assessing that. I mean, AI is already here. And even before ChatGPT, it was here. It was just at a different format. And we already used in a lot of little things that we didn't even really consider AI in the traditional sense. And so I think that question should have been asked probably 50 years ago when we first had the computers, right? Because at that point, that was where we made that leap, where it was a machine that was mimicking the thinking patterns of a human. And at that point, does the benefit of something like this going to outweigh the risks? And are the risks immediate? Are they 20 years from now, 1,000 years from now, millennia from now? So, yeah.
Wow. I don't think I ever thought about AI in the context of this is not the first iteration of machines mimicking humans in a very meaningful, impactful way. I think you're right. We should have maybe considered starting a little earlier with exploring these implications. I want to pose that same question to Rebecca. What are some potential risks and benefits of AI? And how can we ensure that the benefits outweigh the risks?
I don't think we can ever ensure anything. I think there's so many different variables and so many different uncertainties. And piggybacking on what Moira was saying, sorry if I messed up your name, but we have been working through this whole knowledge base of utilizing machines. So we could even go back to the ancient Egyptians. We have been using machines to take the job of human beings for years and for centuries. And so we've never known how it's going to benefit us in the long run, unless we look at sci-fi. And that's my only way of understanding how we can benefit from it, is looking at Star Trek or the like and seeing how they leverage it as a tool. But even when it went over and beyond the tool aspect and became more human-like, then problems arise. So the only thing I can see where we can really evaluate it in real time is based off sci-fi, because in reality, it's constantly evolving. Like Joshua said, 2 days ago, there's making more regulation that's constantly evolving. So we will never know, and we'll never be able to keep up with what's going on, the changes. And so that's what I feel about this particular technology. So we don't know, and we will never know. I don't think we'll ever understand the depth of it. Thinking about in the 90s when the internet came about, if you were a child in the 90s, you thought this was the best thing ever, especially downloading from Napstar and LimeWire. You thought that was the best thing ever. But for maybe individuals who are in our generation or our age at that time, they thought it was going to be very detrimental to education and learning and the aspects. So we will not know until that next generation speaks for us. So that's what I feel.
Excellent point. I think a lot of people would not really dare to imagine that sci-fi can be one of those spaces where people have had the space to have a creative imagination and thought around the implications of this. But I think that it's a good source to kind of refer to, at least for us to have a better way to think about things and a little bit think about them a bit more freely. I want to pose the same question to Josh and then Tom. What are some potential risks and benefits of AI, and how we can ensure that the benefits outweigh the risk?
So I have a flair for the dramatic. So whenever I get asked questions like this, especially in a public environment, I always go to the extremes, which are, in my opinion, life, death, and quality of life. So let's start off with something that is nice to talk about, which is life. One of the great benefits of artificial intelligence is something that was trending on LinkedIn recently. I think I saw this, you shared this, Uniqueka, which was there was a woman that had breast cancer detected 4 years in advance by artificial intelligence. So there was a very early indication that something was wrong, something that may have been missed by a human eye. Like these are like healthcare outcomes. Like that's one of the greatest benefits of, like, we're talking about extension, saving someone's life as being the end result of the advent of AI. But then let's go to the other side of the spectrum, which is death. Like, let's talk about just human history and what has happened. Like Joseph Stalin, the former, of course, deceased leader of the USSR, is famously known for murdering millions of his own people. Not only was his country at war, but he murdered and imprisoned millions of his own people. In addition to that, we have the climate change, where it's possible that because of our digging up oil and burning up fossil fuels, we could theoretically, of course, this is a whole nother debate, we could be driving humanity and the planet to its own extinction. And so AI could determine that for the good of the earth, for the good of life as a whole, that humanity, just to bring up what Rebecca was saying about sci-fi, it is best for the future of Earth for humanity to be extinguished. This is something that has been explored many times in science fiction. This is a real threat. Like this is not science fiction. Like, because we talk about Joseph Stalin, we talk about climate change. Like there are massive detrimental effects to the world that has been driven by humanity existing. Artificial intelligence could conclude that the best thing that we can do is eliminate all humans. And then finally, I want to talk about quality of life. Quality of life in the sense that whenever big technological innovation comes, we end up with temporary unemployment, in the sense that people are going to be displaced. There's going to be job displacement. And if they can't recover, if they can't train, they'll either go into early retirement, and you end up with elderly poverty. Another side effect, possibly detrimental side effect of the innovation of AI is that people are going to lose their jobs. So if we look at throughout human history and we talk about technological innovation, that's never been a permanent outcome. When people lose their jobs, that's not always the case. But we do live in the time where wealth inequality, the wealth gap, is as high as it was in the Great Depression. When I look at my own life, when I look anecdotally, I feel like my groups of friends, they're either doing very well or not doing well at all. And the people who aren't doing well at all, that isn't changing. And those of my friends that are doing well seem to be doing better. And like we see this in the actual statistics. If you just Google wealth gap in the United States, like we're really in a tough spot. And so with the advent of AI, I guess I have a lot to say, so I'm gonna just leave it at that. Like there are some serious benefits, there are some serious detriments to the advent of this technology.
Okay. We're resonating with the audience. I see a comment from Alex Young. He says, piggybacking off of Rebecca's earlier comment, I can see AI widening education disparities and causing more challenges for teachers. So you guys are making some points, but I want to pose this question to Tom before we move into the next. Tom, what are some potential risks and benefits of AI, and how can we ensure that the benefits outweigh the risks?
Let me paint a picture of the past. Now, forgive me, I'm not trying to speak over anyone's heads, so just trust me on a few points. There's a thing called finite element analysis. And when packages came out, this enabled analysis of structural systems that was unparalleled before. And immediately, Joshua, what happened is these engineering managers looked at these packages and said, I don't have to pay expensive engineers to do my analysis anymore. I can use these packages. Those managers were the big losers because what they didn't realize, I need just as smart an engineer to run these packages. They're just going to be able to do more in less time. The same thing happened with robotics. They thought, I can get rid of my skilled workers. Oh, no, you can't. You have to upscale them. You're going to have to hire more people to run and train these robots so we can get more done. That's why robotics came on the scene. You know what the high-skilled workers did when the robotics came? They praised them. They were excited. Joshua, I respect you. I disagree with you. If someone walks me into a warehouse, they show me something powerful, I'm like, great. Who's going to control that? When we bring AI to the table, and I hope no human's stupid enough to put it in charge, bring it to the table and let its voice be heard. But for decades, let's just listen to it and say, okay, we're either going to learn from it right now, or we're going to find it was biased. But we still need to carefully consider what it's bringing to the table. So also, and with respect to my fellow panelists, I disagree. Please don't look to sci-fi. That's drama. That's their job is to create drama, to create tenseness and climax. I tell you, most business leaders that control the money, that can get the brains together to create an AI, they're not going to put AI in charge right away. They're too skimmish about losing profits to something like that. But in calmness, I think AI just needs to be brought to the table. So oftentimes we create a model, and when it doesn't predict what we expect, that's time to say it either made an error or it's going beyond our intuition, and it's time for us to let it calibrate us. It needs to be dealt with caution, like any powerful thing.
Excellent points. And I love that you guys are comfortable enough to each other, even though we've all briefly met maybe 20 minutes at a time since this actual event. So thank you for being able to broaden people's perspective and offer counter opinions and perspectives. I feel like Josh has something. Did you have?
Oh, that was just a single tear rolling down my cheek.
Okay, beautiful. I'm going to move to the next question. I don't want anyone to cry, but if you must, it's okay. I know this is a very intense topic. The next question I want to ask, and Josh, I'm going to start with you. How can we ensure that AI is used in a way that is fair and does not perpetuate bias or discrimination?
So the answer to that question is ultimately that there's not a simple answer. So when I think about this question, I really go back to Thomas Jefferson, who I know we have an international audience. That's one of the founding fathers of the United States, one of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence from English rule. And he says, there's a quote from him, which is, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, in the sense that we live in a biased world. And so the data that it's going to be working on, because remember, all this is built on what are called LLMs, which is large, can you correct me, Tom, large language models? LLM? Close enough?
Close enough.
It's based off of massive amounts of data. And in massive amounts of data, there's going to be bias. And so the only way to counteract bias is to be eternally vigilant. There needs to be a federally funded AI department, like where these things are observed and then they're purged and they're fixed. Like that's the reason why there's a Federal Bureau of Investigations. Those who are watching must be watched. Like, so the end result of this question is there's no simple answer. I think there needs to be systemic controls to make sure that bias doesn't leak into AI, but it's always going to be there and it always has to be policed, meaning that this is we have an eternal vigilant job for someone to make sure that this is not a problem.
Agreed, and there are a lot of organizations that are taking on that function. One of them being the Justice League. A lot of stuff's going to be shared in the tools and resources that we share after this panel event, but I want to continue the conversation. But that's an excellent point, that we are now going to have someone that is playing the role of vigilance. I want to pose this question, and I'll ask Moira next. How can we ensure that AI is used in a way that is fair and does not perpetuate bias or discrimination?
I mean, I agree with Josh in the sense that because the reality we live in is always going to have bias, I don't know that you can ever completely eliminate it. In a lot of ways, it's almost like you have to create that utopian society first, and then use the data to create, you know, the AI that kind of perpetuates that utopian society. But of course, as we all know, that's not a possibility. So to kind of piggyback off of Josh's point where he was saying, you know, the creating kind of committees, bureaus, things like that to be ever vigilant. It's also, I think, important that we look at the systems that perpetuate the biases that we have in place now. So in addition to, you know, letting AI out in the world and then having people monitor, you know, what the results of that are, and then calibrating because of the biases that it's showing and the outcomes. Why don't we do that now with the systems that we have in place? Because I think we can all agree that the current systems we live in now are heavily biased. And you could say education, legal system, you know, Josh talked about the wealth gap. You know, we can examine those now for biases. And I think that is one of the steps that we need to take when implementing something as powerful as AI technology, and simultaneously working to change the systems we have in place now to try and minimize bias so that the technology that we're using doesn't continue to perpetuate the biases that we already live with.
Excellent point. There are a lot of biases in the legal system, education system, and the wealth gap is something that we all should be concerned about. I want to pose the same question to Tom, then we'll close with Rebecca. How can we ensure that AI is used in a way that is fair and does not perpetuate bias or discrimination?
Yeah, I don't think this is unique to AI, and Josh and Mara spoke to this perfectly. Bias is present. I hate to be biased, but I am. I mean, we have different values, different worldviews. Those cause bias in the way we speak to one another. So the only thing we can do is become more aware of it. And now, Uniqueka, would you repeat your question one more time so I can make sure I was thorough with that?
Absolutely. So the question was, how can we ensure that AI is used in a way that is fair and does not perpetuate bias or discrimination? And I think you were kind of getting at the heart of, like, bias is sort of an inevitable human condition. It's a matter of what we do with that information.
Yeah, and I think I'll go back to that previous point I made. I would hope everyone would advocate for AI is not to be put in control. You think about it, we usually rule by committee, by elders. Let AI come to the table as an advisor, but if someone's going to put it in control, where can I move as far away as possible from that? I don't want it in control, but I want to listen to it.
I like that you talk about how we typically rule by committee and by elders. That's a really, really important point to kind of consider here. Rebecca, I want to pose the same question to you. How can we ensure that AI is used in a way that is fair and does not perpetuate nation? I know we've read a multitude of examples where this has been the case.
Yeah, I agree with the panelists. I don't think there's a way we can ensure it. We can't even insure ourselves. Insurance is not really the best method for anything. And most of my business owners can attest to that. You know, you love insurance. But when I think about bias, I think about access and I think about data entry. So there's going to be bias in the data entry because there's a human component putting in the data. So data in, bias out. And then also for access, we're talking about in the United States, and as Josh said, this is an international audience. What about smaller countries? How will they be able to have the access to it? Who's going to be able to regulate and police it for them? Microsoft is now incorporating it inside their software, and that's a global company. How are smaller companies, countries that don't have the resources be able to access this and be able to benefit their communities? So it's great for the United States, but on a global perspective, we have developing nations that cannot have the resources to even use this to benefit their own selves. So I think there's going to be that kind of bias internationally because of the nature and the funding supporting this resource.
I think you make an incredible point when you talk about access as well as data entry. I don't know that a lot of people think about the ability for people globally to have access to AI, much less the internet. Those are all things that people are still faced with. There are parts of the world people are struggling to have something as basic as water. So I think that it's important to draw those connections and how this impacts equity from a much broader standpoint. I want to move it to the next question, Rebecca. I want to start with you. How should AI be regulated to ensure it is used ethically and responsibly?
So I guess it's to follow up to my question. My answer for the previous question. Regulation is going to come from as a committee, and who are going to be comprised of this committee? Is it going to be on a national level? Is it going to be on a global level, like how we have the regulations and committees and the world, the WHO, we have the WHO and we have the UN. Is it going to be on the UN standpoint to regulate how AI is going to be controlled? Because it's not just for one region, it's global. It's going to impact the global landscape. So regulation is going to have international involvement, they need to have individuals in the tech service, of course, legal, and also from different countries, because we need to have more people at the seat of the table to help with determining how we're going to use this and make it better for everyone.
I think that's an important point, that we need to have a committee that's representative of the globe that it impacts. I want to pose the same question to you, Moira. How should AI be regulated is used ethically and responsibly? I understand you works very, very carefully in the marketing space, and so you may be able to give this audience some unique insight on some of their day-to-day as well.
Well, I think, first of all, I think the default is always going to be government. People are going to want to talk about government, but they're not doing a great job regulating or even really grasping the current technologies we have in place now. I don't know if anybody watches these committee hearings when they have the CEOs of these social media companies. Mark Zuckerberg's on there. They just had that hearing with TikTok, and it is frankly extremely concerning how little our own government officials know about the technologies that we use on a day-to-day basis. And on the one hand, of course, I think that you cannot have a technology like this without some sort of regulation. But I think it really comes down to who does that, because it is certainly not our elected officials. They just, they would never be able to comprehend the technology fast enough in order to develop laws, standards, regulations that's really relevant. And we see that now. It takes them 10 years just to come up with something that regulates, the forums and websites that we post on. And by the time it comes around, it's going to be 10 years too late. And with something like AI, where everything is developing, I mean, they're coming out with new technology by the hour. I just don't know that we have the regulation infrastructure in place to be able to handle that adequately. We just, it's almost like we have to develop the experts in that technology to be able to even begin to understand how to institute regulations for it. And quite frankly, I don't know how that's ever going to be done. Sorry to be very.
No, this is the conversation, and that's the intention of the conversation, is for us to have a broad sort of spectrum of perspective, to present things that are maybe uncomfortable and unconventional even. But I think it's necessary, like the point of this whole little hour, I mean, it's only an hour, is to get people thinking about what our lives look like going forward as a result of AI being a part of our everyday lives, and how much in some ways it's already been a part of our lives. So thank you for sharing with us and saying, hey, I don't know that we have the infrastructure in place from a government standpoint, or people with the knowledge and leadership to be able to make decisions that are going to be appropriate for everybody. Things are happening, on a day-to-day basis. When people are excited and squealing over ChatGPT 4, or 3, 4 is already out. Like it's moving at a pace that does not align with how the world legislates. I'll leave it there. How should AI be regulated to ensure it is used ethically and responsibly? Tom, I'd like to hear from you, and then we'll close with Josh.
Wow. Again, I look back at the development of technology. We have one of the most prestigious award systems ever created, but it was created by the guy that created dynamite. And so he wanted a prize for peaceful type things. So we have the Nobel Peace Prize. Airplanes came out that they've been used for good and bad. Guns have been around quite a long time. I hate to see a gun used the wrong way, but sometimes you're in a bad situation and you're grateful someone that knows how to use it has a gun and uses it to protect you and other innocent people. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We could go on and on. Anything that's powerful pretty much needs to be governed. I'd like to suggest this to the audience. Can we separate the power and the potential good of AI? In other words, I couldn't find the comment where someone said Musk and other tech leaders are calling for a halt or a slowdown on AI. They're the ones using it the most. What? Where did that come from? Some of that's been used very powerfully for very good things. But yes, this is very powerful stuff. So it can cause fear. But I think rather than be afraid of what could happen with it, be more vigilant to find out what is it being used for. And the scary thing, as we've all seen, it can be used behind closed doors with no one knowing about it. That's the scarier part. But what is it being used for? It's probably being used to gain some advantage in some market or some where analysis makes a huge difference and speed of that analysis is king. There's too many fronts that could be happening to even be able to govern it. But usually those things aren't as nefarious as what we see in sci-fi, from my perspective. I don't know if that answer was particularly helpful, but that's my current perspective.
It's important to get your perspective as someone who's got an expertise in AI and machine learning. I think that you're asking a lot of the right questions and sharing a lot of insights that will help people think more carefully. So thank you a lot for that, Tom. Josh, I'm going to pose this question to you, and then I'm going to start to lean into some of the audience questions, recognizing that we are at the bottom third of the time we've all have together. So Josh, how should AI be regulated to ensure it's used ethically and responsibly?
Right. So that's an excellent question. I really want to, I guess, give Moira a shout out in the sense that I think about the cryptocurrency world. Bitcoin came out back in 2008, 2009. And then we're at the current time of recording, this is March 30th, 2023. We had a major cryptocurrency collapse in FTX. And the reason why is because regulation, it's been almost 15 years that cryptocurrency has been around. And there's a sheer lack of regulation. There's blatant insider trading happening in crypto. There is blatant like front running where like, you know, they'll make money on the spread. They'll give you a price that's 5 cents wrong. And so they'll just make money on every single purchase you make, 5 cents, 50 cents. These are things that are regulated in the stock market and prevented by an entire administration called the Securities Exchange Commission, where I don't even know if we're at a point where we even consider cryptocurrencies a security at this point. So here we are, 15 years after cryptocurrency is created, we have large collapses, blatant just mismanagement of funds, like, you know, billions of dollars just getting ignited and lit on fire because of a lack of regulation. So therefore, we can't rely on, just like Maura mentioned with the TikTok CEO, like this is something that went viral on social media, like the sheer stupidity of the people who are in power asking like ridiculous questions. Oh, like, can TikTok join my Wi-Fi network? This is the world we live in. And so that means to rely on that regulation in regards to protect us from AI. I think that, like, from recent history, I think that that's a farce. So therefore, what can we do? I think that ultimately, so Tom, you mentioned about jobs. So this is my chance to finally give you a rebuttal, which is when technological innovation happens, there is always job loss on the other side of that, but it's always temporary job loss. We're still on the backs of some of the lowest unemployment rates in human history. And this is over the course of the invention. Someone in the chat mentioned the tractor, the invention of the smartphone, the invention of the radio, the invention of the internet. Like, we're talking about things that have completely changed society, and yet everybody has jobs. And so I think what we have to protect, in my opinion, what I would do is that I would slow down capitalism, because capitalism, when innovation happens, the people at the top, the most productive engineers, the most productive proposal writers, these people are going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 times more efficient. And then that's going to create the opportunity for capitalistic entities, corporations, to lay people off. So let me make one thing clear. Like, in terms of, like, you know, fear of AI is coming for all of us. It's coming for all of our jobs, and it is. So let's just make that clear, because, you know, a big source of stress is like the fear of the unknown. So let's just look at history. Let's just assume that it's coming for your job. The way you protect your job is to use it. You be of the upper tier of your profession that is actually using this. So I don't want to spend too much time, because like I could give an anecdote. Like, so there's a small anecdote in the sense that my little brother, he works at my company. He does marketing. He's really bad at writing. So it's so much so that I've begun to micromanage any written communication in my company. Recently, he showed me something, and I was like, wow, like, I know he's been, like, I bought him books, he's been studying, he's been like trying to get better at it, but he still sucks. And so I micromanage every single written communication. Anyway, recently he wrote something that was incredible. Like, I was just like, wow, like, and it sounds like me too. Like, wow, this is awesome. And then I was like, man, you've gotten so much better. His name's Joseph. Joseph, you've gotten so much better. And then I read it again. I said, you've gotten a lot better. Wait a second. Did you put this in Chat GPT? Yes, I put it in Chat GPT. And I told it to, and I gave it some text to make it sound like you. AI is really easy to use. That's the reason why we're having this discussion. So there's no reason to be afraid. Be the people in your industry that are using it. That way you protect yourself from when the layoffs eventually come. All that to say, the regulation that we need to have is, I believe that we need capitalistic controls to slow down layoffs. For example, during the pandemic, we had the employee retention tax credit, where, like, my corporation got paid to keep people on staff. If I was making payroll, Daddy Biden wrote me a check. Yes, sir, cash that. So I think that the controls we need, because we can't trust regulation to protect us, because these politicians don't understand these things. I think that we have to incentivize people to not lay off. One, to give people time to be. So shout out to Mr. Tucker in the chat and Miriam. both of you made mention of like, what do we do in regards to training? People are going to lose jobs. I know I'm taking too long, but essentially we need to encourage people to go into the trades. The trades are very well insulated, in my opinion, very well insulated from artificial intelligence innovation, because very often these jobs are unionized. There's so much power in these jobs. Very often these jobs need both critical thinking and physical labor. Like the salary of plumbers and HVAC technicians, these people's jobs are going to, these salaries are going to skyrocket into the future. We need to be encouraging people to go into the trades. I believe that there's going to be a lot of money on the back of this artificial intelligence innovation going into trades. In addition to that, as jobs are going to get destroyed, new jobs, to Tom's credit, new jobs are going to get created. The problem with that is that very often people don't adjust fast enough. So that's why I would say that there needs to be a two-pronged approach, which is we need to incentivize corporations to not lay off as quickly via capitalistic controls. And then we also need to encourage people to go into the trades. But older people, as we see like throughout history with technological innovation, the older population ends up in early retirement. And so we end up with elderly poverty. This is a major problem. We don't want our old people, bagging groceries at your local grocery store and unable to make ends meet. Ultimately, that's why I think that we need to push people into the trades. Those elderly people aren't going to be able to go into the trades. So these are the people I'm thinking about the most. Like the younger people can go into the trades. We can't rely on direct regulation to protect us from artificial intelligence, but we can use regulation to slow down layoffs, and we can use regulation to get people the training that they need to be able to switch jobs. By slowing things down and offering free training from the government, people will be empowered to help themselves. So I'm taking a very balanced approach. We're talking about the left helping people, and we're talking about the right being able to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do for yourself. I think we need both of these things because this innovation is happening fast. Jobs are going to be destroyed. People need protection from that, and they also need to be given the ability to make the necessary changes, because we're not going back. This is as big as the smartphone. This is as big as the internet. 10 years from now, as a result of AI, our world has forever changed. The fact that artificial intelligence, there's a robot in everybody's pocket. Everybody already has a supercomputer in their pocket. Now everybody has a super intelligent robot in their pocket. The world has changed.
These are excellent points, Josh. I'm really glad you did that kind rebuttal. The point being, you meet people, they don't want to learn anymore. And you're right. They are going to have to not necessarily upskill, but transition skill. I remember seeing a picture, now an old picture, of a top-notch tack and saddle shop. That's where that was the hardware store you'd go to buy stuff for your horses. Now, photograph of that shop, meaning it was right before Henry Ford was going to not destroy, but greatly reduce that industry. And you know what, Josh? I hand it to you. I wasn't thinking wide enough on the spectrum. I'm sure those guys got laid off, some of them in that industry, where they were experts at creating tack and saddles for horse stuff, harnesses, all of that stuff. But I have met people, it's sad. I'm going to use a specific case, driving through Oregon, always annoyed when I couldn't pump my own gas. And I was at one, and it's county by county. And I asked one lady, how do you feel about, people being able to pump their own gas now? She was worried about it taking away her job. And Josh, I don't know about you, but I looked at her with great sadness, not knowing what to say. That's how low you think of yourself? Pumping gas? You're a human. You're capable of doing so much more. But yet it seems like there is a sector of people, they don't want to learn anything new. But I'm not so sure. That's what concerns me. People that don't want to keep learning and growing. Your thoughts? Sorry, I took over, Uniqueka. I just had to ask this of Josh.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, at least in my approach, of course, I'm not a politician. I don't have any power in the world, but I think there really should be three parts to this solution, which is this innovation is happening so fast. It's happening at a breakneck pace.
Lost the audio.
Oh, we
Josh, we lost
lost
your
your
audio.
Josh.
We're gonna give Josh a moment to recover on the audio piece. I'm not sure what happened here. I'm going to pose the question. I'm going to start with Moira on this and we'll move to Rebecca. As panelists, what do you think about the letter that tech leaders recently penned calling for a pause to AI? This is a question from David Neely.
Yeah, and I think Tom touched on that briefly. You know, it's admirable on its face, but it's kind of, I don't want to say hypocritical, but it's almost like it is, because like he was saying, I mean, Elon Musk of all people, I mean, he's been wanting Teslas to drive themselves for how long now? But he wanted that technology just for his company. And now that it's becoming more available, where a startup could totally usurp and come from under, you know, out of nowhere and own the self-driving space, all of a sudden he's concerned about its implications. But he was not concerned about its implications when he was absolutely trying to leverage AI for his company. So that's just an example. So I think in terms of, if you take it at face value, obviously our discussion here today, we agree in terms of not necessarily pausing it, but I think that there's so many considerations that come with this technology that we just need to be so much more mindful and deliberate in the decisions we make as a society when it comes to AI, because a lot of this stuff, you know, once you can't unring that bell, right? So I agree with that, being mindful, being purposeful, being deliberate. But in terms of the people that it's coming from, you know, yeah, I mean, where was that 10 years ago, dude? Just so and I think, you know, I think also, I mean, I know this isn't the question that you asked, but someone had said it in the chat, and to Tom's point, where he was saying people don't want to learn. I don't know that it's true that people don't want to learn. I think it's true that people don't want to put any more effort into their jobs, because there's a lot of things I love to do in my free time that I do not make any money out of. And I think you have to make that distinction about, for some people, their job is just their job. And it's like a distinct thing that takes up a certain amount of time in their day. And it's easy for them to compartmentalize. It's easy. They don't have to learn anything new because it doesn't take any effort. And then the rest of their lives just takes considerably more effort. So maybe they're reading, they're writing, they're painting, they're doing all kinds of stuff outside of that. And so that takes a lot of mental power. So to then have to, you know, kind of adjust that mental power into their jobs, which as far as they were concerned was on autopilot and they were just fine with it. I think that's the thing, that when you see people don't want to have to learn anything new at their jobs, it's not because they're averse to learning anything new. It's because they're averse to having to put more mental power into the thing that, quite frankly, nobody wants to actually work. You know, you can be lucky in that you love what you do, but at the end of the day, it's like, God, a job, really? We'd rather just spend 99% of our time, if we're not sleeping, in the things that actually we're passionate about, that are our hobbies, that we care about. And for the vast majority of people, they cannot translate that into the thing that gives them money. So I think that's where you see that pushback, where I've allocated as much mental space as I can to my job, excuse me, and I really don't want to allocate anymore.
Excellent points, Maura. Thank you.
There's some great
Rebecca.
points being made in the chat too, Uniqueka, that where,
Yes.
for example, Alex Young gave a perfect example of what I was thinking of, but that's not everyone. It does tend to be the, I hate to say it, but it tends to be the baby boomers. And I promise I'm the oldest Gen Xer you'll ever meet. And Nora Foe makes a really good example too.
Yes. See in the chat here.
I can say for the learning aspect, yes, some people might not want to learn, but some people don't even have the time to learn, especially people who are on the lower end of the job pool. They don't have the time. They just have time to get up, go to work, take care of their family. And to add on something else, they don't have that luxury to learn. So therefore, it's an access problem as well. So with all this technology, it takes a lot of learning for you to even be able to engage in a conversation, to even start. Where do you start? Who do you go to? And not everybody knows where to start, who to go to, and what to do. So, and it goes back to, we're thinking from the United States perspective, you think globally, how is that going to play a role in that knowledge and sharing of the knowledge? So, yeah, that's my concern with the access of education and knowledge and learning, because yeah, everybody's concerned with learning. I deal with surveyors, and of course they want to increase and they want to get their licensure, but they don't have the time.
Excellent point. I think that kind of leans into what Nora was saying. She said, I disagree that people don't want to learn. When you're living paycheck to paycheck and having a family dependent on you, where do you find the time and money to get additional education to raise yourself up? I think you guys are onto something here. I recognize we've got about 3 minutes left in this whole sort of very brief conversation that we've initiated. I know we've covered a lot of different spaces. I want to give each of you guys sort of a 30-second window to kind of give me your final thoughts on what you would like people to take away from today's panel. And then I'm going to do some closing remarks and invite everybody to continue the conversation. And Josh, would you like to start with your closing remarks?
All right, sure. Ultimately, let's be honest, ethics is one thing, but the reason why we're all on this panel and watching something like this is ultimately, how does AI, how does artificial intelligence affect me? And that's what people really care about. And so it really boils down to the fact that the reason why we're having this discussion is because using artificial intelligence is incredibly easy. And the way that you insulate yourself from layoffs and things going wrong is, if you can't beat them, join them. Like, the reason why we have a collective anxiety about this technological innovation is because it's deep down, it's kind of obvious, like, what is the end result of this? And so we should all be using it. And so that would be my take at the end of the day. We can talk about ethics, but ultimately the bottom line is, all you got to do is just ask it questions, just like Google. And then over time, you know, you learned how to prompt it, and hey, write a LinkedIn post about boxing, but write it in the voice of Mike Tyson. These are kind of things that you can do with AI, and you can just have fun with it. Like, use it. If you can't beat them, join them, and let the cards fall. I think regulation is not coming fast enough. There's no one coming to save you. You have to save yourself. Start using AI. It's very easy to use, and you're going to be more productive, and that's going to protect you.
Thanks, Josh. I would like to open the floor for Moira to give her thoughts.
Yeah, not to repeat anything Josh said, so I'll kind of take it in a completely different direction. You know, everyone's talking about ethics with AI technology, but we can apply the same thinking to what we have in place now. And not even technology. I mean, the ethics of, you know, someone kind of touched on this in the Q&A of policing, right? Using AI in policing, take AI out of it, ethics of policing. So I think it's, you know, we get people's attention when we talk about the technology and the AI and all these new things, but we can have that same self-awareness, that same kind of introspection as a society for the current systems we have in place now, and we can remove every single technological advance out of it. You know, our justice system, education, property taxes, you know, but that's not attractive, that's not sexy, so we're not having those conversations. But I think you know, it's just a reflection of society. These same ethical concerns are going to be reflected in every new technology we develop, because they should exist in our lives now. So
thank you, Moira. I think that you made a very valid point. You said take AI out of the equation, and ethics is still important. I really was hoping to get to that question, so I'm glad that you brought it up in your closing remarks. I'd like to give Rebecca the floor to make additional remarks as well. What are your thoughts? What do you want people to take away from today's conversation?
I want people to think that it's not just use it as a tool. It's not to be your boss. It's not supposed to be your replacement. It's a tool to help you. Just like you use a pen to help write. You don't have to go and get the ink from a beetle in order for you to write. You use a pen. to write. You have your computers to help you with typing. Use it as a tool, use it as a resource, and use it just for that. And still vet the work, still check the work, because it still needs vetting, it still needs checking, because it's a tool, not your ultimate solution.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca. Tom, I'd like to invite you to share your thoughts and closing remarks.
Well, what Josh, Maura, and Rebecca said, thought those were great, really did. I want to just provide an insight. To me, it was really helpful because being in technology for so long, I wondered, what is this scare over AI? And then it occurred to me, okay, the lever, very grateful for that. The wheel, even more grateful for that. The car, the plane, you think about it, but then we start to challenge the replacement of the human mind. And people go bonkers. Well, yeah, I mean, that was kind of the last unique thing about being human. But there's this. When I played with ChatGPT recently, and me and a lot of other data scientists did this for one of our vice presidents at my company, we tried to suggest practical uses for it in our day-to-day work. And we found an interesting thing, Uniqueka and fellow panelists. It might be able to provide very quickly a useful function in some type of coding language, but could it architect a complete application? I think where AI is very far from humans, it can't architect unique new things yet. So I'm sharing this in hopes that anyone that's gone a little schizo over AI taking over things, if you like to design and construct, if you like to be an architect of systems in general, I think our jobs are safe for a long time in that realm personally.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your fantastic closing thoughts. Thank you everyone who participated in today's panel. I love the conversation happening in the chat, the Q&A. My sincerest apologies, we couldn't get to everything. I look forward to continuing this conversation. If you're not a member of Proposal Industry Experts, please log in, get an account, it's free. And let's continue this conversation there. Again, my name is Uniqueka Walcott. Ben, I want to thank you for being an incredible support in this process and making it happen. Rebecca, Tom, Josh, Moira, thank you all so very much. You guys have a fantastic rest of the day. Love y'all. Mwah.